Yeah, it's 6:05 to 6:38, 33 minutes. See if we can beat that.
Yeah, we haven't gotten a new one yet.
All right, council, are we ready to go?
Yeah, I just was
Staff, are we
gonna,
good? All right. All right. The time is 6 o'clock. I'm calling to order a regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Sunset Valley, Texas for Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023. Before we begin our agenda items, I do want to thank all the volunteers and staff for a successful 15th Art Fest. It was a pretty good turnout. I mean, I went out there in the morning and then went out there in the afternoon again, and despite some of the troubles with the wind, I think a lot of people were able to enjoy the event, and certainly the temperatures were great. Just in terms of it wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold.
windy.
But I also got to experience all the work that the Arts Commission puts in there, especially Councilmember Medicus. You were there all the time. Yeah, and so this is an amazing. It's a premier event of the city, and I think it's truly appreciated. And hopefully, we can continue to build on it year to year. So, and really, thanks to the staff who are out there. I know we had Public Works Department, Police Department, the admin staff. So, really appreciate everybody coming out and supporting the event as well. All right, so we're going to move into agenda items, starting with public comments. If there's any members of the public that wish to speak, please step up to the podium and state your name and address. Councilor Rosengard?
Yes, I would like everyone to know that we need a clock in this room.
All right.
Keep it at 5 o'clock.
All right, seeing there's no public comments, we're going to move on to agenda item number 3, which is staff reports, beginning with the administration report. And I think Jerry will be taking on this one.
Good. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Jerry Rustover with the Administration Department. I think everyone knows Matt's away on his honeymoon, so I will be filling in on his behalf tonight. For the administration report, under council information request, we don't have any outstanding at this point that we're aware of. For projects ongoing or planned, we do have the comprehensive plan revisions. The final work session is scheduled right now for Saturday, May 13th, with public hearings in June, with hopefully bringing it forward for council adoption on July 18th. We did have a meeting last week, a combined meeting of the Zoning Commission and the Planning and Environmental Committee, and we worked through the final article, the staff edits based upon what we heard previously from both commissions. So we had that meeting, and we think we're ready now to have the public meeting on Saturday, and I think both commissions will be there as well, so they can hear from the public, do some fine-tuning, really fine-tuning at this point on the draft language, and then, like I said, hopefully be bringing it back to the public hearings in June and the council in the middle of July. The new ERP software, staff is conducting research with Tyler Technologies. I'm planning to bring that back to the council on May 16th. Anything you want to add to it? No? Good. And the financial audit is still underway. No news on that. City Hall, as you can see, is still somewhat a work in progress. We need a clock. We're wrapping up with the remodeling of the offices and the kitchen area. We're still waiting on some furniture deliveries, and staff is still currently working on the use rules for the property, the revisions to those. Upcoming events, on the 9th, we will have the police department blood drive here at City Hall. Upcoming meetings and topics of interest, we have a CED meeting tomorrow night to discuss the budget preparation for next year's budget. We have an Arts Commission meeting on May 9th to talk about the mural unveiling, planning for that occasion, as well as to discuss next year's budget. We have a Budget and Finance Committee meeting on May 11th, which will be a joint budget workshop with Council and revenue projections for fiscal year 23-24. We have a Zoning Commission on May 24th, where we will be discussing the city-initiated cases for the city-owned properties at 6107 Brody and 37 Lone Oak. Those notices will be going out next Tuesday. There's a Budget and Finance Committee meeting on May 25th to discuss the administration, court, and general government portions of next year's proposed budget. Upcoming topics with no specific date tied to them. We still, of course, have the ongoing Tyler Technologies ERP software project. We have the amend presentation on the schematic design for the Upper Cougar Creek project. And we have the Brody Lane improvements, project planning for that as well. As far as development and permitting activity, we actually got quite a few permits in last month, but we didn't have too many that were actually issued. We kind of had a wave of people coming in, I think probably because it's the spring and people are thinking summer projects. So we only had one that actually finished up, but I have probably somewhere between 8 and 12 that are came in the past month. So a couple of them got out today, but today is not April. So under economic reports, we have the retail occupancy report included in your backup. Within the last month, we've had the, I'm still working with the Artisan Gelato Shop over in the Market Fair development. That gentleman is coming very close to opening. He's had some issues with the storage, the display case. So as soon as that's wrapped up, we should be able to get him a permanent certificate. I can see the K-Pot construction is still underway. We had the Play Straight Museum project open up last month over on the village side. WellMed is still under construction over here at the old Canoli Joe's. And Dollar Tree is still underway. I know that some folks have contacted us and council members are very interested given the news lately about the bankruptcy of the Bed Bath & Beyond company. My understanding is that I saw in the news today that they started the sale, if you will. So staff will be working on the assessing what the impact of that would be fiscally to the city, as well as reaching out to the shopping center owner, manager to see if there are any plans for that space. I'm sure it's probably a little too early at this point, but we're just going to reach out to them and see if there's any news from their end. As far as sales tax receipts go, in the past month we did receive the report from February, and the collections were $537,000, $537,037, which was an increase over the projection of $487,000. So we await the March report in May. Let's see, we also are still working on the City Hall insurance claims with regard to the flood damage. We have the reconstruction claim equals the paid contracted amount, and the mitigation claim equals an estimated high. TML will be working with us to review and negotiate the insurance company's proposed amount.
And just as a note, council, the meeting next week with Budget and Finance, the joint meeting is from 6 to 7 on May 11th. So if you could make sure you have that availability for your accountants, but we'll be done by 7, so we won't stick around for the whole meeting. Mayor Pro Tem?
I have a draft email to you about vacation for the summer, and I am gone for basically all of July, and now I see that's when the comprehensive plan, so I don't know if we want to push it, or I could do it remotely, or...
If you could send me your dates, and I'll
For sure, yeah.
see what accommodations we make.
Oh, sorry. I know what Bed Bath & Beyond is going through. There was a truck driving through the neighborhoods with a sign on the top saying a bye-bye baby, kind of like everything must go kind of thing. So both of those are closing?
Yes, my understanding is that, we haven't spoken to them yet, but my understanding from what I've seen on TV and know about the companies is they're owned by the same company, and they're both, they're bankrupt. The company's gone bankrupt.
Well, but Bed Bath & Beyond and Bye Bye Baby, but I don't know. So it's the same company. But
Yeah, we'll reach out to the Kimco and see, but my understanding is that what I heard in the news is that they would both be closing down, but we'll have to confirm that. We'll work on that.
it's I guess if they're closing, they're closing. But I thought the whole point of Chapter 11 was like restructure, figure out if you can keep it going, or are they not even trying that? And all right, there we go. And it seems like it is a worry, but it seems like it's probably already worked into our sales numbers. Like a company not doing very well is probably not contributing that much, so I mean, it's still a bummer to have the vacancy there, but, all right, that was it. Can I get a grocery store? Catherine wants the container store, if they're listening.
Yeah, I think we can certainly have staff look at the projected impact based on previous tax revenues and just do an estimate, so we can include that in any of our information we're doing as we're preparing our budget. I think that'd be useful for council and the Budget and Finance Committee to look at as well. So, Councilmember Medicus?
Yeah, and I was reading an article, I meant to copy it and send it to everybody, but about the space that is opening up, like when one business goes out, that there's really a high demand for those spaces, so I'm not sure how long that's going to be vacant. And the shopping center could maybe give us an idea. They might already have people inquiring about it.
Yeah, we'll check with them. I'm going to reach out to Kimco. They just went bankrupt this week as well. Yeah, I saw it just yesterday. It was in the news that they were closing down. So retail can be challenging at times these days.
When is it, do we have time to talk about, it's admin, so, and we talked about Art Fest. It's not really on the agenda, but did we want to talk about, or just, nope?
We're doing wraps on Wednesday with finance, and then we'll have a after action with the staff, and then we'll have a report back to council with all the final details.
Any other questions for the admin report? Let's move on to Public Works.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a couple things I want to follow up with on the Public Works report. Let me go ahead and bring this down a little bit. I'm going to go over a couple things, and then I'm going to hand it off to Dakota to go over and give an update on the CIP project that's underway. We are in the process of, this past month we removed a couple like homeless camps and some other things, especially along 290. And we're still working through a couple other projects. We did a lot of preparation for the adventure build this weekend, and I want to echo what everybody else said and thank everybody who was there to volunteer and help with that event. I think it was very successful. Right now we have TDS here. They're doing a final kind of grind of the stuff that we've collected from the winter storm, and then they're also regrinding what we've already ground so that we can get it a little bit finer so that we can use it as mulch throughout the city. So if anybody needs mulch, please come by and get some mulch, and if you want a delivery, it is a $25 fee for that delivery. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Dakota to let him update on the CIP project that's happening down the road.
Good evening. I'm sure you guys are all aware, like Carolyn said, the project has started on Sunset Trail. The contractor has installed quite a few feet of pipe already in the ground. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 500 feet of pipe already installed. We did today discover that we are going to have to change the alignment of the current water line, so there's going to be an RFI submitted because it's going to be, currently it would be too close to the wastewater line, so they're going to submit an RFI so we can jump it across the street and keep on going to keep our 9 foot of separation between the two utilities. Also, there's something that'll be coming to council on May 16th to approve some testing through Terracon. It's like a $37,000 contract to get the testing done, but we took out a little bit of it, so it'll be less than that. So that'll be coming back May the 16th to get all the proctors and different densities tests like that done on that. So overall, I think the contractor's moving really well, and they're very communicative, so it's been pretty easy to deal with.
I want to add one quick thing to that. Thank you, Dakota. I know there was an issue with the AISD water. I was going to just give a quick update. I thought about that just now. There was an issue with the water over at the elementary school this morning. Austin Water was switching out our meter or something. We don't know what exactly went wrong. The water was very cloudy. AISD they brought a bunch of bottled water in and things like that for the kids to use. They are doing, last I talked to them, they were planning to go get back T testing and stuff. We think everything was just a flushing issue, and so they've, you know, flushed the lines, but they're gonna go ahead and test just to make sure everything is safe over there at the school. So they will be out of water, well, they have water, but potable water for the next couple days as they go through that process. As we know, it takes a little while to get samples and get them back and everything cleared, so. And if there's any questions on anything on the report, we'd be happy to answer that.
Councilmember Young?
One quick question. This is a small thing, but I noticed on Friday when I walked on Sunset Trail, they had signs up saying one way, and I have not seen those signs the last couple of days. Are we responsible for those signs, or is the contractor?
No, the contractor's responsible for those. So I'll be making sure that they make sure that those are up.
Okay.
Because I hadn't even seen them but a couple times, so they just need to be sure that they're maintaining their one-way signs and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you.
I had a couple of follow-ups. One question, because I was out there looking at that old electrical panel that's, you know, until we get the new one plugged in. After the new one is approved by City of Austin, the power will be supplied to that. Is there going to be a tear down of the old panel and removal
Yeah,
of
I
that?
imagine we will take the old panel,
Okay.
it's kind of taken itself down to its
Yeah, I was just curious about this since it's
Yeah.
it's right next to the other one, and Rob and I were having a brief conversation, like over the years, we might just get multiple, you know, new editions of it.
four of them in a line.
I saw in the report the City Hall pond repaired a pump. The pump is working, I thought, because I could see the fountain, you know,
Those are two separate
Two separate
pumps.
pumps, so the pump to actually move the water out.
So yeah,
okay.
there's a couple things, and we'll actually be coming back with some things for the City Hall pond too. That pump is still, we're working on getting a contractor to come out and do some kind of final repair to it. But as they've gone through, and the engineer, Robert with HAF, has gone through and done the calculations for the pond, they're gonna need about a quarter of acre or more of irrigation area, so we're gonna have to do a couple things to make that happen. So we'll be coming back with some stuff for council to consider, probably at the May 16th meeting to do that, so.
Okay. And I think the last one, there was an update, I think we may have talked about this before, but for the council ring that's right outside, it mentions, you know, that putting a new trail in there, and I was just wondering like where in the process we are for that in discussions.
So we would probably be presenting that as part of a project for our FY24.
Okay.
One of the ideas, I mean, we have a lot of people who kind of take a shortcut through the public works kind of area, and we got a lot of equipment, a lot of moving stuff back there, and we prefer people not maybe walk through there.
Don't know who you're talking about.
So we're looking at some ways to maybe redirect and have a better path from like maybe the front of the building around and over to this building a little bit better. So we'll probably be coming back with that as an FY24 project to consider.
I could think of one family that would benefit from having a trail going in front of the building, so. My apologies for how we go through there every morning.
Yeah,
but
exactly. So we're gonna look at that, and we'll bring something back, a little layout for everybody to see, so.
Okay. Any other questions for Public Works? All right, moving on to Public Safety.
Good evening. Don't have much to add this evening, but just a reminder that on May 20th, we'll have the hometown half marathon here in Sunset Valley. I don't anticipate many delays or anything. We're going to close off Jones, west to Ernest Robles, and then Ernest Robles, just south of La Madeleine. We won't block any of the entrances to the stores, and we'll have officers, Sunset Valley officers, at all the residential points to escort vehicles through breaks in the runners traffic. So if there are delays, they'll be very minimal. That's all I have.
Thank you. Other questions for Public Safety? I think I had one follow-up question, Chief. It's regarding the evaluation of no left turns on Jones from a time period in the afternoons. Could you maybe get a little more detail for that?
Yeah, we are towards the end of as the school year ends, we are just looking at what worked and what didn't work for the past school year. That issue of left turns from Jones into the school parking lot, especially at pickup time, it often causes a backup because people want to turn left. They have to wait for someone to let them in. So we're looking at, one of the things we're looking at a no left turn during drop-off hours. The officers are out there, but right now there's no enforcement for that because it's not against the law. So that's one of the things that we're going to look at. School's really busy at this time of year, so we're going to let school let out. We're also going to put one of the radar signs there that flash the speed limit in the school is on both sides. So it will look different on Jones if everything works out, and should help with the traffic that builds up there in the afternoon.
So this would be a sign that would be on Jones by the school or in front of the school coming to the west, I guess, going toward, they're going towards the
East.
east,
Yeah.
that direction, so that people would know they can't turn left at certain hours.
That's right. We'll have the school send out that in their weekly packet, give them a little grace period, and then we'll start writing tickets.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Thank you, staff. We'll move on to agenda item 4, which is council consideration of agenda items for approval on consent. Councilmember Rosengarten?
I move to approve on consent agenda items number 5, which is the minutes of work session and council meeting, agenda number 6, and agenda number 7.
All right, the motion is to approve on consent number 5, 6, and 7. Does anybody want to pull any of those items? I will note that we received public comments in support of item number 7. I don't think there was anything in the open town hall other than support based on the comments that are in there. Is there a second? Oh, go ahead. Councilmember.
And just to clarify, on number 7, there is money in the budget already, and it'll leave a balance of $9,450 in that line item.
Okay. All right, is there a second for the motion to approve on consent item number 5, 6, and 7?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, we passed on consent. Item number 5, approval of the minutes from the April 18, 2023 regular meeting and work session. Item number 6, approval of a resolution declaring May 2023 as Wildfire Awareness Month in the city of Sunset Valley. And item number 7, approval of the Sunset Valley Arts Commission to use City Hall as a location for the Bid Medium Studio Tour sponsoring resident artists. Okay. Council, that's going to take us to agenda item number 8, which is presentation, discussion, and possible action on a Brody Lane Improvements CIP project, including initial assessments and preliminary planning. And we'll begin either with Councilmember Young or staff to introduce this item. And this is sponsored by Councilmember Young.
I'm gonna move this over here so I can talk into it a little easier. Okay, so this is a project that I feel like the city has been circling around for a while now in different committees and different pieces of it. And so we've seen that, CED has talked about lighting and beautification. Planning and Environmental has talked about lighting and trails. And Public Works has talked a little bit about, trails and bike safety, as well as just roadways improvements, of course. So this is, and actually, as you can see up there, the Public Works Committee made an actual official recommendation on this. And the idea is to basically kind of reimagine Brody is what we were kind of naming it. Just basically to come up and do a project in FY24 that incorporates all of those things each of the committees have been separately discussing over the past year, almost 2 years probably, even maybe even longer in some instances, and look for what it is that the city wants to do on Brody Lane and what that signature look of Brody Lane will be. There is a lot of potential there that I think it is to impact the businesses and things positively. And so basically what we are proposing, and let me get up here and I can go down just a little ways, is to basically make Reimagine Brody, to start with doing the existing conditions lighting assessment along Brody Lane to kind of get our baseline of where we're at regarding lighting. And that estimate is attached. The services are about $5,000. We would probably be pulling this, doing a transfer within the street fund because we're looking at street lighting in that area. And then the next step would be to include this as a project for FY 2024. And we would do a public engagement process to kind of engage the community and what Brody would look like in the future. And we will get a task order from MEND, Landscape Architects, to be the one to kind of help do that. They have people who do streetscaping in their kind of wheelhouse. So I think that's where we would be starting. we would do stakeholder meetings that made sure to include all of the businesses. And so that may be meetings that aren't, a lot of times when we host public meetings here, they're at night, maybe not the best time for a lot of the businesses and the people who are working.
Councilmember Young, since you're the sponsor, do you want to start with any additional comments on?
Yes, I would, thank you. I think this is a really exciting project. And as Carolyn mentioned, this is the product of a lot of things coming out of the different committees. In particular, P&E has taken a real lead on this. And the committees are starting to develop a consensus around this, as Carolyn mentioned. I think this is the thing that we can do that has the most impact for our commercial district, because it's something that positively affects all of the shopping centers and has a positive effect on the city. It dovetails nicely into where retail is going, where retail is very experiential. And we're going to create that, we have the ability to create that kind of space that will be very attractive to retailers. I think this is a project that can involve all the committees, certainly P&E. CED should be very involved. We should be talking with the shopping center folks. Public Works, of course. I think there are fantastic opportunities for public art in something like this, so the Arts Commission can be involved. Finance should be involved as well. I think this is a really exciting project for the whole city, and I think it's a very high impact project. It needs a lot of planning, a lot of public input, a lot of thought put into it, and so I think the time to start that is now. We can start very small with first, let's look at our existing lighting, which I think is like a $5,000 budget if I'm not mistaken, as a very first step for this. And then working with the committees, decide where we want to go with this.
Councilmember Reitz and then Councilmember Rosengarten.
Yes, I do like this project. This is, as you mentioned, a quite exciting project. This is something CED has been working on for quite some time. We talked about the beautification, the benches, et cetera, and the lighting. The one thing that I want to point out, though, is that we have no lighting on Brody. So from an assessment standpoint, we probably don't need to spend $5,000.
Well, that's why it's cheap, right?
Yeah, yeah. So we want to look at perhaps how we write that up. That just sounds, how we write it up as far as what we expect to get out of this report. I mean, I would expect to get something of the effect of that it's a lighting plan. Is this not what you're saying?
No, it's not going to have, it's going to basically look at the site use, look at the characteristics, some of the measurements of what light does exist on Brody. So there are foot candle, we can measure some light because you get spillover from the shopping
Yeah, you
centers
get a
and
little
things like
bit.
that. 290. So it's gonna look at that, and it's kind of gonna just set the baseline for everything on Brody, and then, of course, the next step, and part of the process for the kind of vision and design will be that next step where we do the actual, like, what kind of lighting do we need? We know what our existing conditions is, what is the look we're going for, what is the experience we're going for, and then you'll have kind of your lighting plan from that. So that will be more of a, that'll have some public process piece in it, versus this
Right.
is not, this is kind of just your baseline, simple, site visit, walk the area, do some measurements of what spillover you're having, and just getting the baseline for the street.
Okay. I was hoping to get a little bit more information from that than just a written report of what we have currently, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's not, if we want to do something of that nature, that's gonna be obviously more, and it's hard to design lighting for something that we don't know exactly what the look is yet, and what we're going to have. So for example, if we move the trail, we don't wanna say we want lights here, and we're gonna actually move the trail and have this trail undulate a bit, and where those lights go. So until it would probably be best if we incorporate that part, the lighting plan, into the vision and the planning process for the trail, for the road itself. Just so that it's all one unit kind of being designed at one time.
Okay.
Councilmember Rosengarten?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm already on to the next agenda. What my question was is, where is the 4,950 coming from? But when you said we're gonna put it into the budget, or ask for it for the budget for next year,
No, so the 4,000 would come out of R&M Streets, would go to engineering design though. We would do an internal transfer for the
you
lighting.
have
study.
enough in the budget to do this?
Yes, we do. It's not an increase in budget or anything like that. We can do that now.
Okay. And yes, to also add, CED asked for extra lighting on Brody Lane back in 2020, just the start of COVID. And the idea was great idea. It just was, timing was horrible. We didn't know what was going to happen with COVID starting and what our revenues were going to be or not be. And so it was a great idea. It started there. It's their project taking on. But I was curious as to when we have a project like this, and it does involve every committee, how does it go? Does it come back to council and then council sends it to another committee, or does it go from staff across to the committees?
I think in this case, we're gonna have, because we're wanting this to be kind of committee, stakeholder, kind of everybody involved in that process, that it kind of starts with that process. And of course, then we would come to council for, discussion and recommendation and say, yeah, this is the project we're going forward with. I think after that point, my recommendation is that at that point, it's a public works project. It is going to be building something, it's going to be constructing something, it is going to be doing that then it kind of sits with maybe the Public Works Committee to actually go forward with the execution of the project. That way, everybody has a stake in the plan and the vision and everything like that. But when it comes to the practicality of, right-of-way and things like that, I think the Public Works Committee has a lot of background in that area to make that kind of, to turn that vision that everybody's kind of had a part of into an actual reality of what it is that will be constructed.
And then CED just puts the Christmas wreath on the lights.
Exactly. and that's part of it too, is that we make, I do not think that other committees will never discuss it again. And they may say that, well, what if we had more Christmas wreaths or whatever it is? But I think as far as once we get to that make it a reality phase, I think it needs to be a public works project. And they kind of move the project forward through that phase.
And just, I think part of what I'm envisioning is that we've had a number of committees looking at this differently, right? And it's been, like you said, going back to 2020 with CED, Public Works obviously, says this is something we move forward with. P&E has been discussing this for a while. I think by council saying that we are now putting this into effect, we're giving direction and guidance to those committees, but ultimately needs to be, going through that public process, and then, under one committee makes sense, but I think really it's council's project at that point, and so we can provide additional direction to the committees to help and assist with that, but at this point, if we're committing to this through votes, and it's our project. Councilmember Medicus?
So I agree. I think this is really exciting, and we've been talking about this for years in P&E, and I've been in part of the CED comments, and Arts Commission's been talking about it. So I think it's really exciting to bring all of that energy together to make this project happen. I think it's really timely with all the things that are happening with changes in retail, and to your point, Councilmember Reitz, about what's included, I was wondering if it's possible, or is it maybe already included, where they look at what our baseline is and have maybe some comparisons to other shopping districts as to, where are we on the scale of too dark to too light? I think that would be interesting.
I can definitely ask that, and I bet they could kind of they probably have baseline data from other places that they could definitely say, here's kind of where you are in this.
And I think it'd be useful, if we're envisioning a more walkable, kind of like destination type, environment, comparisons to those specifically, right? Because we want to see how we measure, like I said, rather than like a parking lot, that includes a bunch of, retail stores. That may not be a comparison to what our future vision should be. So I think if we can focus that a little bit as well, that'd be helpful.
Agree,
So.
yeah.
Councilor Reitz?
The other thing that would be helpful if, in this process, if they could give like just some basic numbers of if we were to do some of the project next year, what to budget for, some budget numbers, what things cost, so we have a feel for that. So my understanding is this person is a lighting expert, and he's probably done lighting plans, and so they can probably work through some basic numbers.
Okay, I can ask that.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Was this person at the?
Yes.
Okay. I don't particularly understand, I am looking at that scope of work on my computer and also up on there, and all y'all are pretty smart and seem to be on board with it. I don't particularly understand what we're getting out of this, so I'll just kind of go along with you, but I don't know, I'm in favor of the whole project, and there's like some really awesome things I've heard that we want to do along Brody, but it seems like the lighting is part of I just don't really understand why we're getting like hey, this is where the lighting is right now, because if we're gonna redo a lot of it, it's only $5,000, so it's but at the same time it's just like we're gonna do a lot of stuff over there. Lighting will be part of it. I don't know why we are doing this, and you don't have to sell me, but like just for my own knowledge.
Yeah, so this is kind of what I'm thinking, maybe what we'll see is they would probably do some sort of the entrances to the shopping centers where the cars drive in, that may have a greater lighting component to it than other areas. It might be a long corridor, just along Brody. So I see various assessments. I mean, the assessment now is there's nothing.
Right.
It's just spillover light. That's the assessment now. But I'm assuming that what we'll get out of it is something to the effect of these are the areas of concentration where we want to concentrate on.
Or where it's the darkest, that they can say there's.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can definitely check on, make sure that's what we are getting. The question, I guess we could also alternatively just incorporate this into the planning phase as well. And then it would just be part of starting, basically, instead of doing the assessment now, it would just be incorporated into the planning phase of the project as a component of that kind of planning for the lighting, getting the lighting plan, all of that kind of thing. It would be part of the bigger project, basically.
I don't know, what do y'all think?
Councilmember Rosengren?
I agree with Councilmember Johnson and Reeds, is that what are we doing now without having the whole scope of work, the whole idea designed, and then bring in lighting, just like you do a landscape design, you incorporate everything at one time.
Yeah, we can definitely, I have no issue with if we want to include basically the lighting plan as just part of the planning process, and then we plan for lighting that we are going to need as part of that process. Versus, you're correct, we know it's already dark there, and so we know we need lighting. So I have absolutely no problem if that's the route we want to go.
And continuing on, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Councilmember Rosengren.
Continuing on, one of the things I noticed when I walked on Ernest Robles before is that the lighting could have been more efficient with having lighting to where it shines on both sides of the walkway. And that didn't happen. So when we're already planning lighting, we need to think efficiency, and do we put a light bulb on each side of one pole to where it lights to the street and it lights to a walkway?
And that could be part of that discussion we look at as part of the planning process. So the question I have for that, so we are definitely going to be, this is kind of the Reimagine Brody, but there may be an opportunity to expand that lighting a little, the discussion regarding lighting in particular, to Ernest Robles Way and Home Depot Boulevard as well. We are looking into, a new trail on Home Depot Boulevard. We're going to want to make sure that that is lit as well so that people can see that trail. I mean, there are already lights there, as long as they are working, that do light that area up.
I'm going to make one quick comment, and then Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem, and then we'll go to Councilmember Young. So I'll do my attempt at rationalization behind, why we might want to proceed with this. The first is momentum, right? There's a value, and I think this is a very low cost amount to put essentially work in progress earlier than our fiscal year 24 budget. So there's a value just to saying, we want to start this project, we're going to get underway for a very low cost to provide information that we can use as part of the planning, or they can feed into that regardless of whether we contract to this person as part of the bigger project, or we hand it off to another lighting company through an RFP process. So I think there's just a value in saying, we can get started now with some basic information that might be useful to us as we go into that planning process, especially if we can get some gauge of like comparisons or things like that, like I said, very low cost. I think it helps us with the momentum, just to keep this project going and keep, the process moving. The other is just that this particular expert has come and talked to the city and provided, information which I think the city, valued, and I think there is some value in getting their experience, at this stage in the process, and I think, we leveraging that experience in a formal way, right, rather than just the panel discussion. And it may be that we end up, wanting to leverage this firm in the future, right, as far as, as a consultation for other lighting areas, things like that. And I think this gets them sort of, it gets them familiar with the city in a more detailed way than just the informal work that they did as part of the preparation of the lighting panel. Again, I'm okay also if we just decide to push this, but I think that there's, for the cost, I think there's a reasonable discussion to say, primarily because of momentum, but it makes sense to kind of move forward. However, if we want to wait, that's fine too. And then we'll go to Councilmember Young and then Mayor Pro Tem. Right, I think it was Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilmember Young is the order I had it, and then Councilmember Rosengren and Councilmember Mennicus.
So we're pretty busy during the day over in the shops, and during the day and what is over there and how dense South Austin is. Jerry, what do you think?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I also think that's something I'd like to ask the managers of the center. You know what I mean? Because we just know the monthly sales tax, right? So I could speak to them and ask them how the split is there compared to their other centers.
Yeah.
Each center is obviously somewhat different, location, et cetera, et cetera. But I can, it's part of the conversation I had with them about Bed Bath & Beyond. I will ask that question.
Right. So that's what's going on in my mind about like how bad the current lighting is and how we're tapering off. I assume we make most of our money during the day because Home Depot makes and Academy make most of the money during the day, and actually I guess Total Wine probably does pretty good at night. Yeah. So yeah, me too. So, and that entire panel were awesome, and he was one of the awesome people on an awesome panel. So if get him involved early, cool. I'm hoping that even though nothing has been, we haven't agreed on what the total plans are going to be on Brody, but you know, if that can be in his mind as he's looking around at the, yes, he's going to say, this is what you currently have, but I heard something that we might pull the sidewalk away from Brody going over the bridge there to Upper Cook Creek, possibly, you know, whatever percent chance. And just so that if he has any suggestions in there, it's very aware of like some things we might do. So, and yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to get this done anyway, so momentum, I think it's cool to do it now, but just don't take it and throw it in a desk somewhere.
Right.
Councilmember Medicus, sorry.
To answer your earlier question, Rob, I think the reason for doing this is to establish a baseline. You've got to have a place where you start from, right? I would like to see it go a little bit beyond that, though, in terms of what Councilmember Reed said, where it would be nice if he could at least lay out, here's some of your options to consider for lighting,
Okay.
If that's possible.
Yeah, I could definitely ask that. It may change the cost a little bit, but I don't think it's going to change the cost enough that we would need to come back for any kind of request, but I think we can definitely do that.
Right. I think momentum is important. This is a big effort. It's going to take a lot of planning. It's going to take a lot of back and forth. And the sooner we get started on it, the sooner we can begin to make progress on it. It doesn't have to happen all at once. I mean, at least in my mind, and I may be wrong, I think most of FY24 is spent planning for this, right? Because there's a lot to it, and there's a lot that we would like to do. But I think it's good to get started now, just on this part, like I said, to establish a baseline, and as you said, to start to establish some momentum for this. I think we're at least approaching a consensus that this is something we really want to do.
Councilmember Rosengarten.
I'm going to use a couple of examples. I would not start with the lighting company first before I even have the plan of the house built or designed. So I would first get the design of the house, and then I would put the electrical in the design. So you do it concurrently, not one before the other. So if I was to hire a landscaping designer, I wouldn't ask the lighting guy to give me his ideas before I knew what I wanted on the landscape design. So if our sidewalk is going to meander in a different path than what we think now, you don't want the lighting guy to go straight up and down, 10 lights on each side of Brody. It needs to follow the design. So please, folks, I understand you want something to start so that you have this rubber stamp for each committee that we're definitely committed to this, but at the same time, we're putting lighting before we even have a design, and I think that's the wrong process. You want to have the design first and then know where the best lighting needs to be for that design.
Councilmember
Thank you.
Medicus.
So, here's a fleece. So I'm a very visual person, obviously being on the Arts Commission. And for me, in planning and visualizing what's going to happen in the future, or what could be, that dream time, you know, what could be if we could do anything we wanted, it helps for me to have some pictures or examples of what other cities have done, which kind of ties into, I think what we're all talking about is what kind of costs have other cities run into when they do this, or when they redesign the landscape of a roadway. A lot of cities have done this in Texas. And maybe the lighting guy has, if we tell him, okay, here's the parameters, we're thinking this may be, we have Violet Crown Trail coming in, we may move the sidewalk over here. What other examples could you bring to us with some ideas of cost and what other cities have done for us to start getting the juices flowing and getting some idea of what could be? And what kind of dollars are we talking about? So how much do we need to be thinking about for 2025? And so I would like to see something like that. We know we don't have lighting on Brody, but if he looks at that and says, okay, here's where you are, but here's what other cities have done when they've had this opportunity. And this is a great opportunity. So I like the idea of doing something sooner rather than later. But my 2 cents.
Mayor Pro Tem, and then back to Councilmember Orzengard.
I'm trying to almost block out in my mind that anything that comes out of this artifact will be looking forward. It's almost like a postmortem on like how bad our lighting is now. And so we can definitely project that going forward, but you know, the word existing exists in the scope of work 4 or 5 times. You know, it's definitely just like, this is where we're kind of falling over with lighting, and that is half of our day, or you know, a third of our, or a quarter of our open hours. And you know, if we want to encourage people to come shopping, this is where we're just leaving money on the table. And so I know what you mean about maybe asking him, what are some things that we could do? I don't, especially for the price, I don't think we're, and to what Rudy said, there's so many things that are gonna happen over there that it's like, I guess generally talking about like lighting concepts, but it's gonna be such a small part of this for me that it's gonna be, this kickoff meeting is gonna be one heck of a meeting with the stakeholders to understand project goals. So yeah, I know what's in my mind about what this is now, and I'm not hearing it. I'm not hearing the same thing, I think, from everyone, but that's cool. So it's just gonna be that kickoff meeting where we kind of really hammer it in and try to stay in that budget of $49.50 or whatever it was.
I think I saw Councilmember Rosengarten and then Councilmember Young.
On the agenda, it says staff recommendation is approve Reimagine Brody. It doesn't say anything about approving the lighting specifically. It says approve Reimagine Brody as an FY24 project to be included in the budget process for FY24. So I would move to approve the Reimagine Brody as an FY24 project to be included in the budget process for FY24, with the lighting to be included in that overall project.
All right, so we have a motion. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll go and second it, and I wanted to add something to it.
All right, so the motion's been seconded, so that'll open up for further discussion. Councilmember Young?
I like what Councilmember Medicus said about basically going out and doing the research. And I think maybe that actually might be a better or a concurrent thing that we should do to kick this off. And tell me if I'm not reflecting what you said very well. But have staff go out and do the research, do the things you suggested. What have other cities done? What have the results been? What have the costs been? That kind of thing. As this is the starting point for this.
Can I respond?
Councilmember Medicus?
So I wasn't thinking that staff would do the research. I was thinking that the person who's the lighting expert that has done this in cities all over the world could
Okay.
bring some ideas forward, because I think staff's time is pretty much
That's fair. Yeah.
tied up with all of the CIP projects we currently have going.
So
It's more the idea of.
Of changing the,
Yeah.
So it sounds like that maybe what you're suggesting is changing the scope of the contract to reflect the discussion and bringing that back to council for approval.
Yes.
So, as we're approving this motion, if we go forward with this motion, maybe the amendment to that motion is to provide direction to staff to bring back a scope with this particular lighting expert, then provide that based on our discussions. So.
that's where I was going.
Okay.
What she said.
Do the motion maker or the second want to amend that motion to also was part
Need
of the motion?
clarification.
So
So what you're saying, you go ahead.
as part of the motion to approve the Reimagine Brody fiscal year 24 into fiscal year 24 budget, also ask staff to bring back a revised scope of work for the lighting contracts that reflects council's desire to see it provide options for lighting rather than a baseline evaluation of our current lighting.
So it's not incurring an expense, it's staff bringing back research?
Well, it's staff bringing back a new scope of work that council can either approve or deny based on our current discussion. So it's not approving a
Just bringing back a
contract.
scope of work, not saying that we're going to approve
Correct.
$5,000 to do something when we're not even ready with a design.
Correct.
Got it. That I can,
Carolyn, would that be something that we could work with this?
Yeah, so
expert?
what I'll do is I can go back, and it sounds like what you're looking for is basically not necessarily existing conditions so much as, well, a little bit of existing conditions mixed with what other cities have done, you know, with similar like length of road. What costs do we think we would be anticipating to make this happen, or and stuff? So then basically that's kind of where we're going with it, more of a cost and ideas versus, you know we don't have any lights kind of plans.
Yeah.
Okay.
I always forget when I have the floor to ask all the questions I wanted to ask. We have transformer boxes at each corner of each shopping center, is that correct?
I know we have transformer boxes pretty close to them, but I'd have to
I know
look.
we have them right here at Ernest Robles, right at Brody.
Yeah.
And I don't remember over at Market Fair where
Yeah, I'd
the
have to look
nearest
at that
one
one.
is.
That's the one I don't know.
All the parking lot lighting is the responsibility of the shopping centers.
True.
But then we have to have lighting to provide lighting to the parking, for the signage, for the lights.
Streets.
Even though that's Austin, aren't those Austin lights?
Yeah, the lights are, controlled by the city of Austin. So,
Okay.
so that's gonna be part of the plan. And there's some, hiccups that we'll have to overcome also with Austin Energy regarding the light poles and stuff like that. So there's some definite, things that will have to be discussed as part of this process.
Just to let council members know, it's not gonna be an inexpensive job.
No, not at
Because
all.
pulling wires from the transformer to each location where these lights are going to be, you have to pretty well demolish whatever's in its path and then put down conduit to make sure that the electrical is protected from digging in the future and so on. And when you compare it to other cities may have a longer street, a different street, meandering street. You can't compare another city to your city. You really can't. You just have to go out for bids and get it. First you have to get a design, half the concept, and then you go out for bids. It's definitely going to be expensive. Now, CED came up with an idea of doing these lights that were solar.
Yes, they were solar powered lights. And so I think that's something we can also ask the lighting expert as well, is how effective those solar lights are. Because from what I remember, they did have some solar lights, but I'm not sure if they were going to have enough output to actually to provide efficient lighting. So there were some questions about that. So there's some questions we could definitely ask regarding solar lights. So for example, if there's some discussion with the Reimagine Brody project and we come back and we're like, we want lights down the center of Brody. Yeah, if we're gonna be pulling wires and putting conduit down and getting lights down the center of Brody, that may be very expensive. So we will wanna maybe look at if there are really great solar options out there. So there's definitely a lot of questions that will have to be answered through this process.
Okay, thank you.
Council, any further discussion before I open it up for public comments? All right, we'll go to the public at this point.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Melissa Gonzalez, 26 Reese. Am I hot? Okay. So before this project came about, talking about lighting in general, I thought I was a fairly knowledgeable person. I was one of the people pushing dark skies. I had a folder. I had all the articles. And then I sat down to talk with these guys, and I saw how absolutely little I knew, and that I wasn't even aware of the right questions to ask. And one of the things that, in talking to Christophe Garcia, is one of the core people we talked to as we were setting up the presentation, he did emphasize how important it was to get information about lighting very early on. So I think this is a really important thing that we do. I agree with a lot of the comments that were had here about essentially sketching out what we want to do before we do our lighting. But the lighting will impact a lot of this in really central ways as to what the possibilities are of what we can do. And I think in terms of having that menu of lighting early in our discussion, it will impact the look, right? as a critical thing. Those fixtures will be really critical to our design. And I think partnering with the Violet Crown Trail really early and Public Works, because we're still fairly limited in our right-of-way as to where these will go. I mean, we have enough room to put our bike trails and our pedestrians somewhat separate on one side of the street. There's just a lot of factors. So we could sketch that out with our partners of the Violet Crown Trail and then move forward with the lighting assessment. I don't think it would take very much to get that sketch. We actually, in some ways, almost sort of had that in Public Works when we were assessing whether this was viable. And so I think that we want to maybe do that first and then get that, and so that we can start to see what the right questions are, because it's kind of like my mind was sort of blown in these discussions, even though I thought I had my mind around things, didn't. And so I think that, you know, it's just like when you talk to someone who's not in your area, you think you have a handle on what darkness means, but then you don't. You know, you think you have a chance on what the possible options are, but then you don't. You know, and so I think that this is really more important than we know. And so I think that I agreed at first that I thought, well, let's just jump to the next step. But I think it will help us do a better job of what the next steps are, because this is someone who has done this all over the world and knows what all the steps are, and even more so than I think our own consultants would. And so I think that this would be really good to talk to Violet Crown early as a sketch and get where our trails might go, because it's not going to be very complicated. It's our right-of-way. And what the dimensions of those trails would look like. I'm not really quite so confident in our engineers, because what they were doing was regular trails, and I think I really wish they would look at some of the Austin downtown streets for the dimensions of the sidewalks and the pedestrians, like what I talked about earlier in the Great Street projects. And so those are just some of the things that I think we sketch out first, and I think the Violet Crown Trail people are going to be very helpful with this. And then we talk to Christophe very early on so that we have a menu to talk to our partners in the shopping centers. Because then you have, as Councilmember Medicus was talking about, then you have the menu, then you have the visualizations, then it's easier for people to say, oh yeah, this is what the lighting would be like, this is what the lighting should be like. But especially when you talked about some of those really problematic areas and what the answers are in those problematic areas where safety is an issue, especially as you're going down into the creek when we do the bridge, you know, because it will go slightly off. And we need to do something for the Violet Crown Trail on that side. We have, 2 feet there or something? It's not safe. So we're unquestionably, in my mind, going to have to do something bridge-wise over Cougar Creek. And so that lighting is going to be critical. As we go down to it, as we come up from it, that's significant lighting for safety issues. So I think we really do need this person very early on, and the menu for what we can show to our people as we say, hey, how does this look? So I do think that this is the critical factor. Lighting is, along with the benches and the trash cans and all that, that's our gift to the city. That's our rightful job. So anyway, those are, if I can be of any service, I'm happy to, as I sat in those meetings for a long time. But I do think you're on the right track with your discussions, but I just wanted to say how ignorant, but not in a bad way, I felt listening to even more discussions than what were publicly had. So there we go.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilmember Reeds.
How much have we changed the, I'm super dense on this, so sorry. How much have we changed this like lighting scope of work based on the motion? Like, are we, not at all?
That the Reimagine Brody be included in FY24 budget planning, and that we'll come back with a kind of revised scope of work based on the discussion tonight for council to discuss at a future meeting.
Yep.
I had a quick question on our right-of-way along Brody. It looks like we have a lot more on one side than the other.
Yes, we do. So on the west side of Brody, it's a very narrow area. So the majority of improvements are going to have to be on the east side of Brody
Right.
because there's not a huge amount of space over there on the west side. And even that, we may be looking at doing some easements to get a little bit further away from Brody, depending on what comes out of the public process and what comes out of, discussions with the stakeholders as well. So there's, we do have some right of way. The side on the west side is fairly narrow.
Do you,
And there's elevation differences that make that a challenge as well.
okay, do you know what it is? How many feet? Off the top of your head?
It's
Okay.
not more than 10, probably on the
Okay.
east side. I think we got a little bit
I'm just
closer
looking
to
at it
20
on the
west
satellite, so,
side.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So council, any further discussion on this before we move to a vote? It's good we have consensus that this should be part of the fiscal year 24 planning process. I'm excited about this project. I mean, I think it's a great opportunity for us.
I'm sorry, Mayor, there's no agenda out for the public. Is this also where the dark sky one was, or is that a different one?
It's a different agenda item.
Okay, that, I
It's
just wanted to
separate.
check. Thank you.
All right, all those in favor of approving the motion to include Reimagine Brody project in the fiscal year 24 budget planning, as well as to direction of staff to bring back a revised statement of work based on council discussion tonight, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes. Looking forward to this. Thanks, staff.
Me too.
All right, that'll take us to our last agenda item, which is presentation, discussion, and possible approval of a resolution to pursue dark sky community certification to provide better lighting within the city of Sunset Valley. And council, you should have received a revised resolution from staff this afternoon, which that's what we'll be reviewing in place of the one that's in the backup. And we'll hand it over to staff for introduction of this.
So this is following up from the meeting a few weeks ago where we discussed kind of the better lighting and how we got to this point, basically. And so the resolution that we sent out earlier was the one that has been reviewed, and Darren Henry with our attorney's office is here. This will make sure that it's kind of in line with the state statute so that we can make sure that it is enforceable and we can do the things we're aiming to do through adopting this resolution. And so this is just going back to, in 2018, the city adopted regulations regarding outdoor lighting. And then in 2019 and 2021, the Texas legislature made some changes that actually requires the city to enforce its regulation, that if it wants to enforce these types of regulations, they have to adopt a resolution stating that they are pursuing dark sky certification. And so this is the resolution that we brought forward that was saying the city has an intent to pursue dark sky certification or as a dark sky community. And even since we've done this, I think there's been some stuff that's come out in the news. I know Bee Caves has been certified as a dark sky community, and I think Jerry can maybe even speak to some of the things the city of Austin has done regarding some of their recent developments, how they've kind of incorporated dark sky principles into their larger development processes. So this is that resolution that we brought forward to do that. I did want to address a few things, I guess, with that, and that, any lighting that has been done more recently, this does not force that change. This does reset that sunset clock as part of the resolution adoption, I think, to 10 years from now. So it wouldn't be 2028, it would be 2033. It also, sorry, this is like driving a standard. I have to go the wrong way to get to the screen. And I was never good at driving a standard, so. And basically, to provide, one of the things we're kind of also saying is that we're going to look at, educational opportunities, rebates, incentives, things over the next 10 years that we can help, incentivize and help participate and help encourage the shopping centers, residents, whoever, to, adopt these better lightings over the next 10 years. So I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody may have regarding this resolution and see where we go.
Councilmember Rosengard?
Is there a significant difference between 3,000 Kelvin and 4,000 Kelvin?
So 3,000 Kelvin is going to be, if you go to the store, basically that warm white, it's more of an amber, have a glow. So if you go to the parking lot of Home Depot, go to the parking lot of Home Depot, that's going to be closer to that 3,000 Kelvin. They have a lot of the warm amber kind of lighting over there. When you get up to 4,000 and even above that, that's where you get the white light. You actually get more blue light in that situation, which is actually more damaging to our eyes. So there is a difference. it's gonna have the warmer, more welcoming kind of feeling versus a cool white light, basically.
Okay, I'm going to just go right down my list. I sent some questions ahead of
Yes.
time and got them answered. The first question was, do the lights from the Village Shopping Center not meet? I'm freezing up here, guys. I can't believe
Bring
how
you
cold it
gloves.
is in here. Anyway,
And a
the
parka.
lights from the Village Shopping Center, they changed their parking lot lights in 2022, and that's what brought
Yes.
to the forefront of staff and council that, oh my gosh, we can't regulate them to our 2018 ordinance because we don't have the dark sky certification done. And so the question was, did the Village Shopping Center do lights that were not in the 2018 regulations? The answer is,
The Village Shopping Center lights are not all compliant. We were in the process of working with them to try to bring them into compliance, or to at least get them to a point where it was like a variance for a few minor little things that probably wouldn't affect what we're looking at regarding dark skies. But we didn't get to that point. We had to stop, and we didn't get to that point where we could get full compliance. So no, their lights are not currently compliant. The bigger sticking part was going to be the 3,000 Kelvin. That was probably the area where the most non-compliance was at. So they would be in the same spot as any other shopping center basically right now. If they have lights that are over 3,000 Kelvin, they would need to come into compliance within 10 years.
and then if another shopping center asked to have the same type of lights that the Village Shopping Center has right now, your answer would be?
That if the city adopted the resolution, which allows us to enforce the code, then the shopping centers would need to have compliant lighting. And like I said, the Village Shopping Center would also need to come into compliance, as well as AISD, any city facilities, anywhere would be compliance within 10 years.
And then my next question is, have we included the shopping centers in the discussion of this?
So we did talk to them quite a bit in 2018 when we were talking about and creating these regulations. And at that point in time, they said, yeah, we could comply with whatever the city adopted at that time. And so there does create, saying that and then coming in with, your plan, you're going to have a little back and forth at that time. But once the city could no longer say, oh, we can enforce this, then there's no back and forth given at that point. They could do whatever they want. So the shopping centers with no regulations, they can light whatever they want, basically.
I heard your answer to the question, but basically where I was going to go with this is, if Cindy Lassard, property manager for the Village Shopping Center, really didn't have a problem with it, then why didn't she agree to go to 3,000, even though we couldn't enforce it?
I can tell you.
Simply for goodwill with the city. She didn't.
Yeah, she did not. And my experience in talking with them and their consultant, was a very cookie cutter design that came out of like Minnesota, Wisconsin, somewhere like that. And they were just like, this is what we do and we're not changing it.
Okay.
They did not want to, and since we had no way to enforce it at that point, there was no wiggle room for us to say, no, this is, the city of Sunset Valley says this is the type of lighting we want in the city. And so if we have nothing to enforce, then we get whatever they choose to put forth.
But at the same time, she was told, and the only reason she did this, because I get approached all the time also, whenever there's an incentive within the city of Austin to go either to LEDs or go to a different type of lighting that is supposed to be more energy efficient, then these companies come out and contact you and say, hey, if we'll do a consult on your property and we will give you an idea of what the incentives are and thus help you get different lighting. Usually the incentive is much lower than what your out-of-pocket is, but she felt that it was a need for her shopping center because of complaints from the retail. Too dark in the parking lot, looks like we're closed. So by accepting the 4,000 Kelvin as their new light bulbs, LED, they have more lighting and feel that their workers in the retail are now safer. Everybody who's coming into the retail feels safer. And I talked to my electrical contractor, and my electrical contractor said there's not a whole lot of difference between 3,000 Kelvin and 4,000 Kelvin. Above 4,000 is when it becomes blue light
Right.
and white light. And so if we didn't allow anything above 4,000, I think we are being respectful to the shopping center. That may not be the right word. We are being pro-business, and instead of limiting all the way down to 3,000. He also said that 3,000 Kelvin light bulbs are more expensive than the 4,000. So as a business owner, I would weigh what the cost is, and I, when allowed, would go to 4,000. In fact, I went to 4,000. These are the lights that we have at our parking lot, and they're 4,000 Kelvin. They have a hood on them, they sit at an angle like this, and they shine down, but it's 4,000. And I took the recommendation of my electrical contractor because he said that's what you need for the most visibility because it spreads out. If I didn't do that, I would have to have more light poles, which cost me more money. So that is the other thing that the shopping centers have to look at is, do I add more light poles? Because the power of a 3,000 light bulb is less power than a 4,000 Kelvin light bulb.
So I guess this then creates a catch-22, because in order to pursue dark sky certification, it's a 3,000 Kelvin requirement. In order to enforce regulations, we have to pursue a dark sky resolution and certification. So you can see where the
So is there
issue is.
no compromise in between?
that the 3,000
Is there
Kelvin is
no-
the standard. And I had an engineer, not actually the lighting engineer, who would say there is a lot of evidence that in research that shows that 3,000 Kelvin is good lighting and great lighting. There's not a lot of research that says that it's bad lighting and that it doesn't achieve the same goals that 4,000, 5,000 Kelvin would.
My electrical contractor said he was even looking for lower 3,000 for parking lots, and he said he was having a tough time finding lights for 3,000 Kelvin. But at the same time, did you say that there's no negative on 3,000? Well, there's no negative on 2,000, so why don't we go to 2,000 Kelvin?
Well,
There's no negative on
I don't know
1,000.
that. I know the research that they were referring to was only 3,000 Kelvin.
I'm being a little,
Yeah.
ridiculous, but at the same time, I'm trying to say, maybe, even though dark sky says you have to be at 3,000 Kelvin, maybe we don't do dark sky, but we do a city regulation.
We can't enforce city regulations without doing
Yeah.
dark sky. That's the catch-22. Sorry.
It makes no sense.
I didn't make those rules.
Yeah.
Talk to the legislature.
Just
Yeah,
makes no
yeah,
sense.
no, I'm not gonna say it does or not, but it's a catch-22. We can't enforce regulations. We can't say, yes, 4,000 is okay, because in order to pursue any kind of regulations, we have to be pursuing dark sky certification, which requires 3,000 Kelvin.
I just want you to know, I cannot vote for this tonight, period.
Mayor Protem?
Yeah, the Texas legislature has tied our hands. They took our power away, and the Knight Law Firm sends us more reminders that they're taking more and more control away from us at every legislative session. But you know what? Keep voting that group in, so. The other thing I was thinking is, it is kind of a discussion with the International Dark Skies IDA. So if we want 4,000, go to them, and then that becomes part of that standard. But you might need some like data to back it up, and they have theirs. That's what they settled on. There's an entire organization based around doing these studies and stuff. So, and that's what they settled on. So, talk to them about it and get them moved to 4,000, and then everyone else can have 4,000 Kelvin lighting. How many more people want to talk on this? All right.
Councilmember Reitz and then Mayor, Councilmember Young.
I have a couple of questions. One is the question that came up back when the village did their lighting, and that was the signs. The signs basically had to be turned off an hour after sunset. And I know that y'all worked
Yeah.
at something, there was some,
It's basically, it's not an hour after sunset, it's, after the businesses are closed. So if the business stays open till 11, then probably around midnight, their lights should go off. But it's not an hour after sunset. So we're not going to be darkening everything at like, 6:30 during the, winter, basically. It's after the business is closed when they don't need their lights on anyhow at that point. It saves energy as well.
So that would be important to put in our code, I think, because their code says it turns off. So I would like it
Yeah, we can make
specific in
sure
our code.
We had that insurance from them that is true. So we know.
I remember seeing
Yeah.
something with that. I think that's important.
Yes.
I think the other thing I wanted to bring up is that I was driving back from the other side of Dripping Springs a couple of weekends ago. It was Saturday night. It was probably about 10:30, 11. And there were a ton of signs on.
Yeah.
They were not like dark, and there were no reason. It was like the Jiffy Lube, they close
They
at
aren't open,
6,
yeah.
I know what time they close. So it's like, but they had their signs on, and so do they enforce? I would say at
So-
least half of their signs were on.
So, and I think, I think, and I can definitely ask Michelle, the city administrator of Dripping Springs, but I think they're just heading into the really hard enforcement period for them. So I don't think they're there at that point yet. So their sunset is
Oh,
coming
they're
up.
close to 10 years.
Yeah, they're close, but they've got a little bit more time. So they're entering into their time period. So they're not quite there yet, I think. So they may not have full enforcement available as of this point.
Okay, that's, so the thing is, when you make a change, so when we made this change, 2018,
2018.
how many residents actually converted over, would you say?
There were very few, I'd have to look at the numbers, but there were very few residential houses that had issues that would need conversion.
Oh, nearly everybody in the Meadows does.
There were quite a few in the Meadows regarding
They're
the
all built at the same
do-
time.
door, the
same
lighting
fixtures.
around the thing. So there have been some who have converted and have done dark sky lighting. I would say some in the villas have, I think we've done a lot more rebates in the villas probably than we've done in other parts of the city. So I think there does need to be, we've got a 10-year timeline that we do need to make some more concerted efforts. And we talked a little bit more about increasing those rebates and kind of making sure that we do it for more lighting, because I think some of you guys may have more than just a front light and a back light kind of thing.
I got
So-
4.
Yeah, so if you have 4, we need to make sure we can cover 4 lights, basically.
Yeah.
That people can do that. And that the cost includes, lighting, lights are one of those things that, a lot of people are more, apprehensive about doing yourself. It's not necessarily a DIY thing, so it may be something that we need to look at electrician cost of, being incorporated into that. And so I think there is room for us to, look at those rebates and look at those incentives for that. And also look at what we can do on the commercial end to, incentivize them as well. So I think there's opportunities there. And so I really like the idea of resetting that clock for 10 years, so we have a good amount of time to be able to prepare everybody for that and work through that. And especially like
Yeah.
if we're talking about compliance with the AISD, that's usually a bond thing that they have to incorporate into their bonds that they need to look
Yeah.
at. So it's
That's a lot of
something-
working with them.
It's
Yeah.
they have a lot more challenges too.
So, so I think that's important. The more we can get it to be easy.
Yes,
To,
we want to make it
to-
very easy.
Yes, and frankly, I would like to convert over. It'll update just the look of my house.
It will, yeah.
It'll look better. So I'm excited about it. But
Yeah.
it's like I don't really want to spend $1,000 on it.
No, I think
So
And, I'll make sure I know planning environmental, I think even CED has talked about the rebate, so we may need to work
think
over the next
looking
couple
at
months so
this-
that maybe by September, when we come around for budget, that's usually when we adopt the rebate programs as well, that they're already included into that process.
And maybe have a lighting fair or something like that to
I like
get
that
people
idea.
excited about it. And
Yeah.
the more people can get excited about it, the better you're going to be.
Yes.
The other thing that concerned me, so one was what time you have to turn off the signs. 2 was just how much lighting for housing, for the rebates. The third one was I remember when the village converted, one of their installers said, I don't even know how to measure this. Whatever we had as a measurement they didn't even know how to do it.
Right.
And so it's like, is this something odd? I mean,
Yeah, I think there was one area that I think we needed to kind of re-examine in that section of code to make
Okay.
sure it was clear. So there are definitely a couple changes I can see bringing back to council with an ordinance to change a couple things
so
in the code.
I would like to see
Yeah.
that.
I
I
think
would
there's
like
a
to
couple
see
areas
all of
where it
those
should be clear.
changes in there, and I think that would be good with the more robust rebate program and get people excited about it. You know, when you think about, you know, back when my days when I was in college, you know, and went through organizational change, and it's like you got your 20%. Your first 20% are your early adopters, and those are your P&E people. You know, they're the early adopters. They're excited. You know, they're going to do it. And then you have your, you know, your bell curve. It's going to be your 60%.
Yeah.
You know, and then you have the last 20% who's never going to do it. So it's just like, don't worry about it. You know, but it's that 60% is how do we get that 60% excited?
Yeah.
And see that. So that's really what I want the program to do, is how do we get people excited about it?
Okay.
You know, Dripping Springs has done a very good job of getting people excited about it. Now, they have a different situation there because it's actually, I mean, it's pretty dark out there. And, you know, you can see stars. It's much more, you can't see it as much here.
Yeah.
But there are some benefits. And so it's how do we get people excited, and how do we put in all these little steps to get them excited about it?
Okay, yeah, I can definitely look at what, I know Dripping Springs, I mean, it's part of their identity, and it can definitely become part of Sunset Valley's identity, and I think we can definitely, I mean, we've hosted star parties before, and it's interesting to see, you know, we've had one year, of course it was, and once Burger Center turned off their lights, it was amazing with the difference that you could see. So I think we could maybe work and have some kind of educational kind of moments like that where we can make that happen. So we can really see. how it is.
The seminar that y'all had was outstanding.
Yeah.
So kudos to them who put it on. They did an excellent job. So.
Councilmember Young?
I just wanted to say that, to me, just as important as better lighting is us having local control, as opposed to no control, right? And unfortunately, the situation is it's one or the other. The IDSA so far has been fairly flexible. You know, they're not ideologues where you have to do it this way. They're willing to make concessions. They're willing to work with people. They're willing to work with local communities to help them. And we're seeing widespread adoption of this across Central Texas and lots of other places. I think that, again, more than anything else, the ability to have local control where we can decide how we're going to enforce this. And we've got 10 years to get people in compliance. I love the idea of offering rebates, and as Councilmember Reed says, getting them excited, getting them involved, making them want to be part of this. And I think rebates are an important part of that, and those are things we should look at, particularly for the commercial entities, to get them involved in this. It didn't sound like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carolyn, that when you talked with the property managers, in particular the one for the village, that they were necessarily against this, right? They weren't, it didn't sound like they were totally inflexible.
When they were talking about their bringing in the new lighting,
Right.
like I said, they came in like with a cookie cutter design. This is what we've done at shopping centers and other places. This is
Right.
this is what we're doing, kind of thing.
And it's
and then, like I said, we were having a little bit of back and forth, and then, of course, we just had to stop at some point.
Right. But for them, it was just the path of least
Very much
resistance,
so.
right?
It was very much the path. of
So
least
if we offer them incentives, you know, we can go back to that back and forth and say, here are our regulations, we're willing to work with you, we're willing to negotiate and work this out.
And there's a variance process in the code too.
So I think, you know, we're not putting ourselves in a box by adopting this, as opposed to, if we don't, they can do anything they want.
Any other, Councilmember Medicus?
So I agree. For me, it's a lot about local control, and I'm very concerned about how our state continues to take away local control. And if we if this is the pathway for us to have control to enforce our lighting ordinance, we can always update our lighting ordinance. But for us to be able to do anything without this, someone could come in and do bright up lighting, 5,000 Kelvin, 6,000, and we have no control. We couldn't say no. And that's not healthy. And so I'm in favor of us moving forward with this so we have control over our own destiny here in our city.
I'm going to open it up for members of the public that may wish to speak to this item.
Melissa Gonzalez, 26 Reese. I appreciate all the really good conversation and all the good ideas. I do want to say that we did have someone come in, and we are generally very closely in compliance with the ADA already, and there has been drift. I think that a lot of the shopping centers, which we didn't have somebody on staff who cared to look, but according to previous mayors, a lot of the shopping centers already have that built into their deed restrictions and their development plans that they needed to be dark sky compliant. And we drifted. And if you want to actually see, because there is an app and you can put it on your phone, but we checked them, and this shopping center, Homestead, the one with Kohl's, is 4,000. Even though the lights were designed for 3,000 and in that shape, they drifted up to 4,000 because nobody told them, or they had a change in management or whatever. So we need to be on top of it for things like that. But it's actually in the development code for a lot of these that they are supposed to be dark sky compliant, and perhaps some of them we could have enforced because that is possibly enforceable. But local control, it's going to be scary to see how much local control is eroded by June. And this is one thing we can do something about. So I would encourage you, so that people in the villas don't have the problem that they did before we fought, to have not being able to read the paper at midnight. Thank you so much.
So Council, just to weigh in my own thoughts, I'm in favor of this resolution. However, I would like to, as part of any motion, to pass a resolution tonight, provide direction to staff to bring back changes to the 2018 code that make it clear, what we're looking for, and it also may be a chance to make sure that we amend the code so that it doesn't, it still meets the dark sky compliance, but doesn't significantly impact the businesses. If we think there's some things we can change in the language and work with the dark sky, International Dark Sky Association to make sure that it matches what the intent of their regulations are. So I think it makes sense just to bring back that code as part of the direction for any resolution that we adopt as soon as staff can get that ready, so that we can proceed with that as well. So we're not enforcing something that is unclear or maybe could be cleaned up a little bit. Councilmember Medicus.
I'll make that motion. That we adopt this resolution and that we direct staff to bring back or begin to work on updating our 2018 lighting code, and also that we ask our P&E committee to look at the rebate program so that we have a more robust rebate program as we move forward.
Is there a second for the motion? Councilmember Young? All right, that opens up for further discussion. Councilmember Reitz?
Oh, maybe I got confused. I thought we were going to update the code and then we would do the resolution. Maybe, obviously, that's not the motion, though. Again, my preference is to do it in a cohesive approach. I am for dark sky, and I will vote for it eventually. I will not vote for it until we get all our I's dotted and everything. But no, I think it's important that we do it well. So.
Councilor Medicus?
So question for Carolyn, I don't believe our code is going to need that many amendments. So.
No, it won't need very many amendments. We will definitely reach out to Dark's IDA and kind of talk to them and make sure everything's in there, but I don't think there would be a lot of amendments. And it, kind of going back, this does allow the city to enforce regulations on outdoor lighting in the interim, because I would really hate for somebody to come in the interim and say, oh, we're going to do this, and we say, maybe you'll do this, and then they install something that we're going to ask them you know, change eventually too. So, but I don't think there's a whole lot. And the one area I'm thinking where we need to kind of look and tweak a little bit, if that is an area that comes into question or non-compliance, there is a variance process that they can also do through council that we can clarify it at that time. So there is a way to, that if that section of code is like one where it's like kind of iffy, that people are having a hard time to understand and get compliance with, then we can come to council and just ask for a variance to that section in the interim while we look at making the change to that code.
So I'm concerned that if we don't adopt the resolution and we wait for a code revision, which could take us months to get through and to come back to council, that in the interim, we could have someone come forward and want to do something that isn't even compliant, and then we have no recourse. So,
Emergency meeting.
well, we have enough meetings, I think, so
Well,
I'd like to
That's,
protect ourselves.
it's nice to get things done correctly. So,
Councilmember Young?
I just wanted to echo what Councilmember Bennett has said about someone could come in here, particularly if we're going to have potentially a couple of stores, new stores come in, and they have no guidance on what they can do, and they say, well, the state says we can do whatever we want. That worries me.
Any other discussion on this? All right, I'm going to move to a vote. All those, and I'll just make sure the clear motion, all those in favor of approving the resolution to pursue dark sky community certification, to provide better lighting within the city of Sunset Valley, and provide or give direction to staff to bring back as soon as possible changes to our lighting code to make sure that we are that it's not confusing language and as part of what's in there currently, but also to make sure that we can accommodate feedback from the current council discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay.
nay.
And I believe that's 3 votes for aye, and motion passes. And I certainly value this discussion. I think it's important for us to have different perspectives, so we can't always be unanimous in our votes, and that's what we are part of as city government. I'm sure that as part of this process to bring back code changes, that we'll have a chance to provide the feedback and see if there's other things that we can tailor that match the city's needs specifically versus what's what's part of the baseline, right? I think there's room there based on what Councilmember Young and what we had at our Better Lighting panel discussion. So, well, Council, I think we've run out of agenda items. Didn't quite beat our record for timeliness from the last session, but we have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. All right, we are adjourned at 7:37 p.m. Thank you, staff, for your time tonight, and thank you all for your input.